A lot of people have pinpointed the 6-1 defeat at Leyton Orient in pre-season as one of the major turning points. What were your thoughts after that game?
I was very worried, to say the least. There was about 4,000 Newcastle fans travelled down to that game, and it was, if you remember, it was arranged at the last minute because the game where Utrecht got called off because Sunderland were playing in the Amsterdam tournament, and we really knew our place at that point, that we were now playing second fiddle to Sunderland, and then to get smashed 6-1 was, it was humiliating, and I think that was the day that it all came to a head. I remember, not only was the performance all over the place, disjointed. You had players like Oba Martins barely breaking into a sweat, and I think Habib Bey that day it was really the end of the road as far as he was concerned, because he just didn't look the focused player that we'd all enjoyed watching in the previous 2 years. After the game, I remember we were stood on the touchline waiting for players to come out, and Jose Enrique was the first player to come out, and we'd done a bit of an interview with him, and then after that the press officer come out and said the players aren't talking. We knew at that point we knew something was seriously wrong, and there was a bit of a sort of do going on in the dressing room, if you like, and it emerged that when Chris Hughton came out, he explained that the players had decided not to speak, and obviously days and weeks later it started to come out that certain players had been told buck up or leave, and it resulted in Martins going, Habib Bey, Sebastian Bassong, whose head had gone completely at that point, and then later on Damien Duff, who was probably the only one of the four that left in dignified sort of manner. So to lose them 4 players was probably, on paper, was a blow, but if they're not the same players if the heads are all over the place, and to get rid of them was probably the blockage, the dead wood, if you like, from relegation to sort of propel Newcastle's championship challenge. And let's be honest, they never looked back after that day.
And many of the ones who stayed have really turned it around this season. Who for you has been who's been the best player this season, do you think, for United?
Oh, that's a massive question. That I look around. You could go through every player and make a case for a player of the season candidate at least, but you've got to look at people like Steve Harper, whose experience has been unbelievable. He's pulled off some absolutely massive saves. Going back that Sheffield United game away when we won 1-0, he pulled off 3 worldies in a row, and that got us 3 massive points at that time, which got us back on track after a little bit of a blip. You've got Jose Enrique, who's really come of age, and for a player who's used to playing in La Liga against your Real Madrids and your Barcelonas, he really took this division by the throat and got on with it. You've got Colaccini, who's turned into a cult hero. We all know the song. People earlier in the campaign, people like Stephen Taylor, he laid the foundations for where Newcastle are now. You cannot forget about his contribution. You look at Danny Simpson, who's worked his socks off all season. Then you've got the 2 sort of big figures in the middle, Kevin Nolan and Alan Smith, who they've been brilliant this season on and off the field. I know there was a few people whinging on radio shows when I was giving people like Kevin Nolan high marks earlier in the season, but when you look back at it, Kevin Nolan's been absolutely massive for this club. He's got 15 goals. He's put tackles in. He's rollocked people where and when necessary. And the difference is, sometimes with the job that we do, is that you don't always watch the ball. I've obviously watched the game from the terraces. You don't always watch the ball from the press box. You're watching other things. You're seeing other things. It's not like watching it on the telly. And the amount of coverage that Alan Smith and Kevin Nolan have put in, and the mileage on the pitch, has been nothing short of phenomenal. And a lot of that sort of goes unnoticed. I think Alan Smith, the West Brom game, I think when the lad missed from about 2 yards out, and Alan Smith put in an unbelievable block tackle. I think that was one of the key moments of the season, because if West Brom had scored there, the tide could have turned a bit, and they could have pushed away. But getting back to your question, which was about who should be player of the season, you've got Gutierrez, who's been brilliant. He's starting to show a bit of final product. People like Wayne Routledge have come in and done really well. Danny Guthrie, so many times he's been the fall guy, but he's been brilliant all season. And then you've got your strikers, Amiobi started the season in fantastic form. Andy Carroll's really come of age despite some of his problems off the pitch. Peter Lovenkrands, 15 goals. Niall Rangers pushed on this season, and then you've got players who are sort of coming through like Williamson and Leon Best, who could all end up being good players for this club. I know Leon Best's had a bit of stick early on, but strikers will score goals, and hopefully we might see something from him in the last 6 games.
Just one final thought on your hopes for next season.
Well, I just hope that we can enjoy it more than the last stay in the Premier League, because it was pretty gloomy. I think, as always with Newcastle, the expectation's going to be there that every game that Newcastle United play, and people want to see a win, and they certainly want to see a committed performance. And I think in the last Premier League season we didn't see that often enough. It was in complete disarray, and I cannot see that happening this time around, because the foundations have been laid this season. The spirit seems to be there, the togetherness seems to be there, and you've got to look at that and think that hopefully next season, if we're taking on the likes of Hull City and Stoke City and Wigan at home, they've got to be looking to win them games. I know they've progressed a little bit, but I think next season, if we can possibly just consolidate in the first few months and then just go brick by brick, hopefully mid-table finish, I wouldn't complain with that. I certainly wouldn't complain with that last Premier League campaign. But then you've got teams like Birmingham who've come on, and this season they're going for a top 10 finish. Who knows if you get on a decent run? Obviously, I think the days have gone now of Newcastle pushing on for a top 4 place at the moment. But the days are also gone where Newcastle got promoted last time. They finished 3rd, so we'll just have to see what happens. But I think most of the fans now will really be looking forward to playing Premier League football again, going to the big grounds, taking on the big teams, and I think you'll find there's a few scores probably to be settled, especially the big derby game with Sunderland. I think they really thought that they sort of were going to become this North East super force. It hasn't happened. They've fought off a relegation battle. They've had one player in Darren Bent, and bring them on. Let's look forward to going to the stadium like next season and restoring a bit of order, if you like.